Welcome back to Fire Emblem Ready Dawn, and phew, okay, recording 313 took way longer than I expected, but I am glad that I at least managed to show every Grail Mercenary defeated at least once, even though it took me probably upwards 50 attempts. I love battle saves, I can't even imagine doing that without battle saves. But anyway, it's now time to move on to the grand finale of Part 3.
Queen Alencia and the dragons of Goldoa persuade both armies to accept a temporary truce. The blue light that burns within the medallion grows more fierce with each passing day. To prevent the awakening of the evil trapped within, the fighting must be stopped. However, the Apostle and her army refuse to abandon Sephiroth's forces in Benyon. Though they hoped the Daein would cease fighting, they knew battle was inevitable. The bloodshed begins anew.
That title is not a good sign, at all. Although you can now make jokes regarding a certain game in the series about that title. So, this scene that we're about to see has only minor changes in the English version, but one thing they added is incredibly significant and ends up changing a lot in Part 4. So, I have the extended script version of the Japanese version of this scene up right now, so I'm going to run you through all the changes in this scene. Yeah, so not only is this war going on, we also have a bloody civil war going on in Benyon. This is really, 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 really bad. However, no one here knows about the medallion except Raphael, who probably should be telling them about it right now. So, this is not in the extended script, so presumably this was actually a localization addition. Why don't you join up with the Apostles' army is a question that a lot of people did ask about the Blood Pact, so the localization has to explain that. Though this is fairly obvious, I feel. So, this line is actually kind of funny if you know the extended scripts. Guess what Micaiah says in that version? There's no longer anything we can do. There is only one path left for Daein, and that is destruction. Yeah, pretty much the exact opposite of what she's saying here. And the introduction to this scene is very similar, but in the extended script it's Almeida herself who comes in saying there is still hope. So the Hopebringer is changed from Almeida to Micaiah. But the fact that Almeida knows something about the Blood Pact is true even in the Japanese version. Really? No, there's no way you can keep that up. Obviously, this scene is different if Peleus is dead. And the Peleus is dead version in the extended script is particularly interesting to me, but I'll talk about that later. What Almeida tells us is the exact same in pretty much every version of the script, with one major exception. The version where Peleus is alive, though, Peleus gets some dialogue here, so this scene is a little bit expanded upon. We remember from Path of Radiance that this was referred to back in Chapter 18, where Tanith explained it. It just happened to kill every royal in line for the throne except Ashnard. Obviously that wasn't a coincidence, and we're about to find out why. Oh, by the way, something that I want to point out, that what there, it's actually kind of interesting. In the extended script, it's Toroniu who says that. In the normal script, if Peleus is dead, it's Micaiah, and in this version, it's Peleus. So, 3 characters, 1 identical line. This detail is the same in both versions, except that... in the extended script, Almeida actually has a line here where she's asked who that wise man was, and she says she doesn't know the details, but Ashnard kept a lot of strange company. She explains then that Izuka was one of those people, and that he... well, if Peleus is dead, she calls him a dastard who only wanted to create biological weapons. And if Peleus is alive, she says, that dastard from the very beginning, he only intended to betray my son. She also mentions that Ashnard brought Izuka over to, quote-unquote, cure my illness. This is a plot point regarding Almeida that won't make sense until part 4, but remember that. It's a little weird that she goes into this in the extended script at this point, though, because it's kind of off-topic to the rest of this conversation. And probably not just them. So yes, Ashnard still killed the previous king personally. That part is true. In both versions, Almeida mentions this, so this was not a localization change at all. Ashnard was able to break the Pact's curse even in the Japanese version. The change... and we get a pretty nice shot here. This happened, I believe it's about 18 years before it's talked about in Path of Radiance, so Ashnard was a lot younger here. Now, this is the one localization change in this conversation. In the Japanese version, the destruction of the document was not part of breaking the Blood Pact at all. And in fact, this is where the Japanese version makes the Blood Pact really contrived, because Ashnard was able to kill the previous king and end the Blood Pact without being cursed himself. And Micaiah asks Almeida, how did he do this? And her response is, I don't know, it just kinda happened. He killed the previous king and the curse was gone. Don't really know why, but plots. So in this version, they actually make it very, very clear how Ashnard did it. He killed his father and then destroyed the pact itself. So remember, the clause about actually ripping up the physical document is not in the Japanese version. But the pact fading from the dead king's arm is. Again, in the Japanese version, there's just no explanation for why Ashnard was a special exception. He just broke the curse for reasons. This detail I don't think is mentioned in the Japanese version either, but it is inferred from the way Almeida acts after this line. Because, yeah, Peleus fully intends to die this time. So the reason why Almeida kept so tight-lipped about this whole thing is she's just desperate and doesn't want to lose Peleus. And that's really visible in the version of this scene, especially the extended script where Peleus is dead. Because at that point, Almeida has completely lost her mind. She wasn't exactly fully sane to begin with. Peleus is really the one remaining shred of hope she has in her life, and with him gone, she just loses it entirely. Now, what's about to happen in this scene is kind of interesting. Almeida threatens to kill herself, and Kurthnaga rushes in and intervenes. Now, this scene still happens in the version where Peleus is dead. In the English version, it doesn't really make a lot of sense because they cut the extended script. But in the Japanese version, there is a reason why Kurthnaga has to rush in front of Almeida. but it's not because she's trying to kill herself. In the extended script, if Peleus is dead, at this point, Almeida completely loses it and tries to murder Micaiah. Okay, so another thing to explain. In the version of this scene where Peleus is dead, you find out the Blood Pact's mark has transferred to Micaiah. Not really sure why her of all people, because she's not really the leader of Daein or anything. It honestly should have gone to Almeida. But anyway, because this happens, Almeida says, after she gives her full explanation, she's like, "You, the mark of the Blood Pact has been transferred to you, then maybe if I kill you, it will end." Now, logically, she knows that won't work, but she doesn't care. With Peleus' death, she's lost everything, and she just completely loses her mind and tries to murder Micaiah in a fit of insanity. It's a really terrifying but also very powerful moment that is only in the extended script though, unfortunately. And Kurthnaga rushes in, this time not to prevent her from killing herself, but to prevent her from killing Micaiah. Yeah, sorry, there's a lot to explain about this scene. So, this detail here is actually different in the localization, obviously, because of the destruction of the physical documents. And also this thing about how it takes two parties to make a pact. These lines were added in the localization. So we have another way to get out of this. Also, hunting down the Senator won't be too hard. He's the leader of the Senate, and he's very hard to miss. So we have to kill Lekain. Unfortunately, directly moving against Bednion would cause Lekain to invoke the Blood Pact. This is going to be nearly impossible. So, these lines are in fact still there in the Japanese version. This is where the scene ends in that version. And of course, there's the reveal, but it was very obvious. And Ashnod's former wife, being the sister of the Dragon Prince, is also very important. We're gonna find out how all of that factors into things in part 4. There's so much I want to talk about Almeida, but I can't yet. We'll get her full story eventually, don't worry. And I find her backstory to be one of the most interesting things in Tellius, personally. Yeah, the "I'm so sorry for everything I put you and father through," that is still in the Japanese version, and that is where the scene ends in that version. But the plot point about killing Lekain and destroying the documents, that was invented for the localization. Now, for the most part, I prefer that version, but there is one kind of problem there. And that's this scene. So, yeah, this is kind of a thing in, Tellius. Dragons aren't exactly known for thinking things through. We had in the last game, Nicaea decided to betray everything and side with Ashnod just to save someone who was effectively already dead. And this time, Kurthnaga's decided, I'm gonna fight on Micaiah's side, for reasons. I guess he's trying to help them look for a way to find Lekain, but unfortunately, we're about to have a battle, and that means we have to fight one of Goldoa's dragons. Well, maybe. Actually, fighting him is optional, don't worry. Yeah, if Diginsia found out, he'd probably completely lose it. This thing. This is actually the one hole I see in the whole kill Lekain and the curse thing that the localization added. So, Ina can communicate directly with Kurthnaga. Only Kurthnaga though, it only seems to work between dragons. Or at least only Lagoos. But the fact that Kurthnaga can send messages to Ina directly, in this version, couldn't he just send Ina a message saying, okay, Ina, tell Ike that he needs to send a covert team to sneak into Bednion, kill Lekain, and Lekain should be holding a piece of parchment, destroy it. In the localization, there's nothing really stopping Kurthnaga from doing that via the Sending Stone. Of course, he doesn't say that because in the Japanese version, there was no kill Lacane in the curse clause. Also, I love the symbolism of it being almost dawn here. And with that, they really should have given us this bass music in the last part rather than this one. But yeah, say goodbye to the previous happy bass theme. This is the bass music we'll be having from now until the very end of the game. But like I said, I really wish it played for 313 as well, because it would have fit there, especially in the version where you decide to kill Peleus. So yes, for some reason the Crimean Royal Knights have been bumped up to the top of the group here, and we still have a ton of people to swap around the inventories of. I need to remember to change my inventories around because Soren needs to take back Meteor right now. Because this chapter is in fact, and I need to also take back the physics staff, which is on you right now. This chapter is the second time that Soren needs to use Meteor. Because Soren needs to fulfill the second condition for unlocking the special epilogue scene. Technically third, because the second condition is actually to spare Peleus, but the third condition is a direct consequence of the second condition. The third condition can obviously not occur if Peleus is dead, and you probably already know what the third condition is by now. So, I'm going to go ahead and swap my healing items back to people. Who wants the elixir, actually? I guess I'll see. Maybe Nethany can take the vulnerary. I suppose Har could take the elixir wherever he is. There he is. Okay, you know what? I'm actually going to go ahead and convoy that hammer and staff. So, at this point, in fact, I might want to go ahead and take some healing items for Gatry as well. At this point, you might want to prepare for the next part by putting any items that you want to have other parties access into the convoy. Let's just say that having a lot of good items in the convoy might help going forward. Not really sure where that 6-use concoction came from, but I'll take it. I'm going to go ahead and convoy some useful weapons. Especially things like these. I don't think I'll need to buy much from this chapter, because I already have a ton of good weapons on most of my party at the moment. Now, where the heck is Rolf? Yeah, it's times like these that I really wish I had a search function. There he is. Okay, you take that. Rolf can probably afford to get rid of his regular crossbow. I guess he can take a healing item too. I think Har is perfectly fine on weapons for now. Guess Ulti can trade back some healing staves. I guess Mist will take one. Let's just get rid of that one-use fire on Soren. Yeah, in the Japanese version, it would be very useful to sell this for the forging points, because like I said much earlier, weapons are worth the same amount of forging points regardless of how many uses they have left. But, obviously, that doesn't matter in this version because forging points don't exist. Alright. Also, something interesting here is this is one of the few chapters that we have access to both Leanne and Raisin's inventories. However, it won't last. Because we only get Raisin playable for this chapter. Leanne is not. They wouldn't give us 2 herons. This is before Heroes. They hadn't figured out that you could just prevent dancers from dancing for other dancers to prevent that whole issue. She might as well just convoy all this, but... Do I have any other... Doesn't really look like I have any other Olivia Grass or Lagoose transformation items. I think Ranulf will keep the Olivia Grass that he has, but I guess Mordecai can trade hers over to Leanne. Because having a good spread of transformation items on our herons going forward is going to be really useful. As for everyone else, I think Nethany is fine for weapons. Oh, actually, I might want to go ahead and... actually, no, Sigrun's fine. Sigrun, for some reason, is forced into this chapter. I don't know why, but she is. And it's also a game over if she dies in this one. Tanith, though, I think Tanith's alright on weapons for now. Might as well convoy that Wu now. Actually, wait, no, I don't need the longbow, because Rolf has longbow range and everything anyway. I think I'm good for items for now. There's really not that much significant in terms of bargains here. There's just a Rolf's bow. You know what, I'm gonna go ahead and buy one Olivia grass for Leanne. Actually, no, wait, for the convoy. No, I don't need it for the convoy, because Raphael, doesn't even need to be transformed. So that's good. In fact, do I even have any magic cards at all in my convoy? The only reason why I'm asking myself is because I don't seem to have any. Okay, then. Actually, keeping... Nah, Blossom's not really going to be that useful going forward. Also, in the armory, we can buy a whole bunch of weapons here. Lots of very, very powerful ones. Pretty much every weapon you could ever want, except the more powerful crossbows. They're still not selling arc tomes, though. I'm going to go ahead and buy a silver blade, because I don't actually have any of those, and that's going to go in the convoy. I want to save most of my gold, though, because I might need to keep a good stock of gold going forward. I can forge, but I think I'll do that later. So, really not much to do in the market. Let me just go ahead and check supports. There's a lot of supports that I can potentially do, but I think every support that I really want to do already has an A rank or can't raise, so that's really fine. So, skills. This is actually pretty important, because having a bunch of skill scrolls in your convoy might be useful going forward, and in fact, I think I might actually remove Adept now, because that's a great skill and I don't want to leave that on someone I'm not using. Ranulf is fine. Oh, that's interesting. Once you use a Satori sign, there's no going back. That mastery skill is locked to you forever. Do I keep celerity? No, actually, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to actually take celerity off of you. I'm just trying to think who I want celerity on the most. That's actually kind of a tough call. For now, I'm going to actually put celerity in the convoy just so I have a choice as to who to give it to. Yeah, like I said, the convoy is going to become very important soon. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and remove your pass now. Even though that might be useful for you a little bit later. Okay, Nullify, I normally like to put in the convoy, but I'm going to have access to Ha's inventory again very soon, so yeah, I'm going to keep that with Ha for now. I think I'm okay with those skills on Nephany. Rolf, actually, wait. He doesn't really need Paragon, he's already at the same level as everyone else. I'm actually going to go ahead and take Paragon off of you and then put that in the convoy. Titania, no. Soren, I think, is fine. Yeah, the other Paragon, you two just don't need to gain any more experience than you already are, so I'm going to take that Paragon off of you. And Mia's fine. And the question now is, who do I give Adepts to? I could give it to Rolf. That might not be a bad idea. Or I could give it to Gatry. It is speed percent though, and that's a little bit lower of a chance. And Rolf doesn't exactly need Adept all that much. I might actually give this to Gatry for now. I was hoping to put Daunt on you, actually. You know what? Changing my mind, and this is what I like about Radiant Dawn's skill system, it actually lets you change your mind. I'm going to put Daunt on you to keep the Dauntless Daunt combo going. And then Rolf is going to take Adept. Because at this point, I don't need to worry about the skills I have on people, because this is going to be the last time we fight ourselves. But as for everything else, okay, so Rolf needs to convoy that Paragon. I want to make sure that all my Paragons are in the convoy. And yeah, Gatry's one automatically went to convoy because he had a full inventory. So yeah, let me just quickly check what I've got in the convoy. Okay, a few wind edges, that's good. I've got a decent number of lances. Oh, and I have a fresh tomahawk. That's actually Ludvex. I probably should have given that to someone by now, but I think I'll save it for part 4. Hammer and staff, I kind of want that to be in the convoy. And a bunch of vulneraries, arm scroll, and then these skills. So 2 Paragons, Blossom, and Celerity. Yeah, I want to keep those there. Except the 3rd Paragon is currently on Aaron, and I can't take it off of him before this part ends. So I need to remember that. And is there anything else I need to do when it comes to skills? I don't really think so. Oh, in fact, actually, you know what? No, I'll keep these two on for this chapter, but very soon, Ike's going to have very little room for other skills. And I'm not going to be awarding bonus experience to anyone, because everyone that I want to use is already kind of overkill level, so I'm not really going to need bonus experience for now. I want to hold on to that for now. So, info. This conversation here is the reward for getting Boyd and Mist to an A support. This one requires them to have an A, and it does actually get you an item, so I actually wanted to show this. Getting Mist and Boyd to an A also slightly changes the dialogue during this chapter as well. So it actually is kind of interesting, and I believe this is my first time in a playthrough actually getting this conversation. This was one of the few events in the unlockable event recap that I didn't have. All this chaos must be getting to her the same way it's getting to the Lagoos and the Herons. And we get this again. And that gives you a Spirit Dust. I think I might actually save that, because there's someone I might want to use that on later, and using it a second one on Soren is kind of overkill. This one, though, this one doesn't really require anything to unlock. This conversation is kind of... it's both good and bad. This is one of the few times outside of Shin and Rolf's supports in the last game that you actually get to see them openly acting as master and pupil. Also, yeah, that line's kind of disturbing coming from Rolf. There actually was a pretty good fanfic that I remember reading a while back about how Rolf was sort of losing his innocence in all of the battles that he's in. It was slightly dark, but it was actually pretty well done. But yes, this bow's actually for Rolf. And in this playthrough, I'll actually be using this bow the way that it was intended to be used, because usually that thing about Rolf saying, are you going to use it yourself, is ironic, because generally I tend to give it to Shinnon. Shinnon does sort of care for Rolf in his own special way. So, just when it seems like Shinnon stopped being a jerk, he goes back to being a jerk again. Although these lines actually work in this playthrough. Of course, Shinnon's still kind of selfishly motivated, in his mentoring with Rolf. So that conversation kind of goes back and forth, but it ends pretty well. Okay, so Rolf now has a second silencer, which is kind of amazing. And I think that's everything that I want to do there, but I will be coming back to the base after we watch the opening cutscenes of this chapter, because Again, thanks to comments for pointing this out to me, but there are some characters at the start of this whose inventories you can actually mess around with if you go back to the base. And yes, if you look closely, you can see that Neg is there. You might also notice Peleus is actually on the battlefield. This is a very major change that of course only happens if you spare him. Unfortunately, Micaiah's not holding back. But if only she knew that this battle going on longer means really bad things. This line's kind of funny because it's almost fourth wall breaking. It's like, yeah, the Grail Mercenaries are overpowered as it is. You can use someone broken on your side. However, that's really bad for us. Really bad for us. Raphael is also on the enemy side, though I'm pretty sure that he never chanced for anyone. Kind of. But he's actually not that strong for a Laguz Royal. You're finally just realizing. This is true, but Kurthnaga is the weakest of the Black Dragons, so it kind of balances out. This is actually significant, but we won't be able to interrogate her about this until much later. Because yeah, why would Ashnard marry a Laguz? Well, we'll find out. Unfortunately, we might only have one more day left. And I don't just mean to live, I mean for this entire world. And yes, Dayan, Gallia, Phoenicis. I actually love this little exchange. Yeah, Leanne is the one Heron who's not accounted for here, so she's watching the medallion. Timon has some great dialogue too. So, that's Phoenicis' role in this battle. Goldoa. And Crimea. The Apostles' Army and the Grail Mercenaries. Ness is a pretty apt word. This is going to be a very, very chaotic battle. But first, if we go into our units list, Elincia, Lucia, and Leanne are actually present, they're just not deployable. And that means we can actually return to base and manage their items and skills. So again, thank you to Collins for pointing this out. I didn't actually know this, but I can actually do this. I can convoy Lucia's torch. That way it'll actually be useful later on, because in part 4, Lucia is going to be forced into a party that does not have any Fog of War chapters. So the torch will be useless unless I do this. One other thing that I want to do, though, is, this is your first opportunity to do this, even though it won't actually help in this chapter. Elincia has this Mercy skill. The Mercy skill makes it so that Elincia cannot kill enemies. She'll only reduce them to 1 HP. Obviously, this is really detrimental to Elincia's combat potential, so I'm going to remove it. I think in the American version, the Elincia only text was not green, but they fixed that in this version. I could be wrong about that, though. But yes, with that removed, and with the torch and the convoy, this is one of the biggest maps we've seen so far. In fact, this is practically a genealogy map. a lot of enemies, a lot of NPCs, and we get to deploy 15 characters. And it's a freaking route chapter with 84 enemies. But wait, how can you possibly route the enemy if they include Nyla? Let's just say that, there is a way around that. There will be a way around that. Also, we have to fight the Dawn Brigade once more, and that means, oh boy, we actually have to go through Edward. And I actually really have to go through him, because before I begin the chapter, I want to explain one thing. That extra condition that I need to fulfill for that secret epilogue conversation. Soren has to fight Peleus in this chapter. By the way, Peleus is on the map, and here are his stats. He is one of the few dark magic users in this game. So, good luck having Soren fight Peleus without Meteor, or Blizzard. But yeah, you need a long-range tome to do this, because otherwise, yeah, seriously, good luck getting Soren past Nyla with him surviving. That is why I needed Meteor. I really, really needed Meteor. So, the main goal of this chapter is going to be to slip Soren through these enemies, carving a path for him, and that's going to mean beating Edward. So I'm going to have one final duel between Edward and Mia. I need to take down Edward, Nolan, and Aaron, and get Soren into position to hit Peleus with a Meteor. That's really the only objective I have in this chapter, because the chapter mostly plays itself, for reasons that will become clear once we begin. So, next time, it begins. Or rather, it ends.